Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are doing our diversity reboot series here at Power to Fly, amplifying Black excellence. In our next, my name is Hunter, my pronouns are he, they. We are doing our next talk is bringing your authentic self to the workplace. Now, do you feel like there's one version of you at the workplace and another that kicks in once you close your computer? Now, we have Autodesk, Cassier, Territory Sales Representative, and Anjelica Warren, Principal Customer Success Manager. Yes, understand that authenticity is the baseline to building a fulfilling career with meaningful relationships. So in this chat, we're going to learn how they embrace their full vulnerability and bring their full selves to work, and how we can too. So Jared, Anjelica, welcome. How are you today?
Doing well.
Great.
Okay, before we jump in, Anjelica, I was reading your bio, and so, amazing. We got 10 years of experience across engineering, services, product manager. But then you scroll down, and I love some of your free time stuff. Training for Olympic weightlifting? Come on, talk to me about this before we jump in. Talk about your authentic self. What?
Yeah, not to go to the Olympics or anything like that, but the type of weightlifting that they do in the Olympics is something that I'm working on. It's never something that I thought I would do. I just started doing it because I was in a lot of pain from previous injuries and I wanted to get stronger. And the gym is amazing. They're LGBT affirming. They do a lot of racial justice work, and it was just a place that I wanted to be in. Because there was good people there, I found that added to my desire to be able to kind of perform and want to do better. So it's definitely a special place for me.
Oh, I love hearing that. Thank you for sharing that. That is so awesome and so inspiring too. Jared, do you have something that you do that that's fills you up and makes you feel, that helps you bring your authentic self to work, right? Because we're in our bodies, we're doing that, or maybe it's, we were geeking out on some books earlier when we were chatting before. What helps you ground yourself before you go off to work or come back to work?
Absolutely. Being in Colorado, definitely leaning on all things Colorado sports-wise. I snowboard on the weekends, rock climb when it's warm out. And so that really on the weekend gets me prepared for the week, gets me really grounded. Also just affirms me too with my physical abilities. It's just all around good for you.
Yeah, totally. So thank you both for being here. As I think you may have met my dog in the sync chat. He is nibbling at my finger right now, so he keeps me grounded and slightly distracted. So we'll see how it goes, y'all. He's like, "Oh, dad's on. It's time for my attention." So so we, and this is what we're at, right? Bringing our full authentic selves to work.
Yeah.
Here we are working from home. It's all these different things, and people get to learn more about us in a way that is more intimate than previous work environments, right? And so, we were talking about it's an act of vulnerability, right? If you got kids and they're running in the background, that's a vulnerable moment, or whatever could happen, when you're at home. So I would love to hear about, both of you, I'm sure have there's parts that we used to leave at work, and then there's parts that we bring to work, and now it's a little bit more meshed together. But, I'd love to start hearing about, with each of you, your takes on what it actually means to bring your whole self to work, because I can still kind of curate my digital space here from my presentation to my colleagues, but how do you bring your full selves to work? And what is that balance that feels comfortable and safe for yourselves? We can kick it off with you, Anjelica.
Sure. When I think about bringing my full self to work, you kind of alluded to this, what's the balance? working from home, there were a lot more things that were blended. Honestly, it started to just become a lot of work to try and kind of separate like what felt good, what didn't feel good. And so what I kind of asked myself was, what would I say or do if I were already friends with folks that I'm working with, or if we were a really collaborative team? And it's definitely, I wouldn't say has worked out every single time. I definitely had some awkward moments, like someone say, hey, how was your weekend? And I'd say, oh, I went and I got my locks tightened. And they were like, your locks? Why are you tightening your door locks? And I was just like, oh, no, I mean my hair. And so, you have some awkward moments here and there, but then you also have some surprising ones, talking about that same subject with someone else. They were just like, oh, really? Like, well, what hair type do you have? My daughter has a 4C hair type, and we really like these hairstyles. And it's, from folks that I would have never expected. And we actually connected on new products to use. And so sometimes you find connection where you least expect it. And so I try to kind of lean into curiosity with regards to bringing my whole self to work, because you just never know what someone else may also be into. So cultural things aside, I feel like in terms of safety, if I'm not necessarily feeling comfortable, I always feel like I can lean back on my values. I can lean back on, I'm someone who shows up with empathy. I'm someone who shows up with purpose and honesty. And so regardless of, what situation I'm in, those are some things to me that when I want to just make sure that I'm feeling safe, I usually lean back on my values.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Jared, how about you with that balance of bringing your whole self to work? Any experiences that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, Angela, you bring up a really beautiful point about, thinking about your teammates and your coworkers as friends and how you show up for them outside of work, and like kind of bringing that same energy. That definitely kind of summarizes how I feel and what that's like showing up at Autodesk, being my authentic self, especially now as we've started making our way into the office and like we really get to put that into action when we're physically around each other. For me, it's not holding back. A lot of my past experience and the kind of my narrative that I'm rewriting in life is to just be how I am with my partner, how I was this morning making breakfast, and just my happy-go-lucky person, bringing that same energy to the workplace and not being worried about, how folks are going to interpret that, and also finding those common denominators, like Anjelica said, it's not always worked perfectly. So, you got to know, like at a big company, sometimes there's people you're not going to mesh with, or there's going to be, some hiccups here and there. So just applying that and kind of being able to read who, you feel safe with and who you're drawn to and can be successful with.
I love that. And I love hearing you describe you're making breakfast as your happy-go-lucky self. What a lucky partner you have. That's not how I am when I'm making breakfast. I'm like, need coffee, do not talk to me yet. I see Jared just like, good morning, babe. How you doing?
Yeah,
well, that sounds wonderful.
I know, right? I was like making my blackberry pancakes this morning, just like in the
sounds
zone.
good.
I know, right? We love
make
breakfast.
Yourself blackberry pancakes for breakfast?
I do. Yeah, I did this morning. So breakfast is the big one here.
I'd be feeling real good about myself if I like started off the day with blackberry pancakes. So I might have to take that as a tip.
Do it.
Maybe a side hustle, you can start like a bed and breakfast. We can all visit, we can start with blackberry pancakes, and then we can have our coffee. And then once I've reached happy-go-lucky status, then we can like get into it and like talk about our days.
I like it.
So, oh, and friends listening, if you have any questions, about bringing your authentic self to work and the workplace, feel free to drop them in the chat. We would love to hear from you. Any experiences, positive, neutral, maybe some uncomfortable ones, all is welcome here. Any questions, advice, tips you'd like to hear about, please do spark up the chat. We would love to hear from you. So let's get into it. It's a little deeper. So was there a moment in your career when you finally embraced the idea of bringing your authentic self to work? How did this change your relationship with your coworkers and your overall fulfillment at work? So this is like a two-part thing, right? So was there a moment, was it at a job, choosing a job, in between, a pivot? What was that moment where you're like, oh, was it during the pandemic or all this stuff is coming together? Or was it before when you're like, you know what? I want to go this way, and I want to do this. And once you did that, how did that change your relationship to, coworkers and that fulfillment, right? Because I know in my experience, if I feel like I'm like bottling part of my potential or part of myself, it makes the work less enjoyable because I'm like, oh, I don't want to like out myself in this group of, people or whatever. That's my experience, whatever it is, when I'm like censoring myself, it makes me not want to be there as much, right? So Jared, was there a moment for you that this was a change, and how did that change moving forward?
Yeah, it was honestly during the pandemic. I had relocated back to the mainland from Hawaii and was job hunting, and it was really when I started working at Autodesk. Very much in a lot of ways, this chapter of my career has been my most authentic, and so yeah, I would say this most, the last couple of years, I'm coming up on 2 years with the company, and kind of at the beginning there was that kind of that fork in the road where I was like, all right, the gig is up, like I need to be more authentic moving forward. I know it's going to make me happier. I also knew what my experience was prior when I wasn't being authentic. So and then and this changed my relationship with my coworkers and overall fulfillment, because I felt like it was less work to just be me and to not have all of that kind of mind chatter that was blocking me in the past in previous companies. I found that I've created or cultivated this amazing community within Autodesk across all sorts of geos, by just being me, and then finding other folks who I can identify with and that relate and also have empathy and maybe similar stories, and finding that common denominator. And it's definitely been the driving factor for my feelings of fulfillment at the company.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing that. And congratulations, over 2 years, it's a big shift, and that's a huge accomplishment. And it's there's that happy-go-lucky self. Look at that. And it's just so great. It's so wonderful to hear, in such a tumultuous transitional time for so many people, that there are these opportunities that some folks, including yourself, have been able to like flourish in it. So I'm just really happy for you. That's really lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anjelica, was there a moment for you?
Yeah, mine was a little bit awkward. I felt like I had a little bit of a kind of identity crisis moment. This was back at a former job that I used to have, where I was a product marketing manager, and we were having our annual user conference, and I was launching a new product. So in addition to being the owner of this product, they asked me to be, one of the keynote speakers. And while, this was the product that I was launching, they also said, hey, this is really going to be great to show like diversity on the stage. And, I checked a couple of those boxes. But from my perspective, I think that's the first time that this particular company had kind of made any sort of efforts in that way on an outward basis. And for me, like, it didn't feel great. Like, I felt really glad about this product that I was launching, but the fact that there was, it felt like I was being used to also kind of just amplify kind of like a moment of diversity. And for me, that was a moment where I said, wait a minute here, like, you're not going to be the one that's just getting advantage, to being able to take advantage of showcasing me for the effort of diversity when I don't even feel like I can show up necessarily to work as my full self, representing these different parts of my personality. And so it wasn't like a full light switch moment, but from then I definitely thought like, okay, I want to own this. I want to have my own sense of agency in terms of how I'm showing up. So that way this is actually real. And so the more I started opening up, it wasn't specifically with respect to, my race or gender or anything like that, but just in general, like, I started being more honest with folks about how I was feeling, like what I was excited about, what I was struggling with. And what I found was people shared a lot more in return. And I got a lot of help that I didn't necessarily expect to get. So there was a really exciting moment where I reached out to the CEO of the former company that I worked at, because I saw her on a panel and she talked a lot about authenticity and being scared. And so for someone in the C-suite that, you know, was willing to kind of expose that, I wanted to just kind of learn from her, to learn for someone who's made it so far up the chain that she has, how she embraces vulnerability. And it kind of turned into this mentorship opportunity. So we learned from each other, and it was a really awesome opportunity. And I don't know that I would have done that if I hadn't identified or saw in her some of those same things I was looking for in myself, to want to show up with vulnerability, and to really be my full kind of authentic self.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome. And it's such a perfect segue. So the question next up is, you know, we often worry that our coworkers may consider us unlikable if we open up, right? So I love hearing about part of your journey of, you know, overcoming fear was reaching out to this person and seeing what this person was doing, and then you learn from each other. So are there other ways of other tools, or maybe some things that you learned in this process or elsewhere, of overcoming the fear of being rejected or judged for our true self?
For me, I think the community has definitely been critical. Outside of this one individual, like starting with a trusted group was really impactful, because when, like, at the Autodesk Black Network Summit, which is, it happens every year and everyone kind of gets together, being able to just be with people that talk about similar challenges that, you know, are across different roles, that are across different experience levels, it helped me see, it's like, oh, a lot of people have some of the same concerns that I have. And so I think just being able to be in that safe space with that group initially gave me enough kind of confidence to then branch out in other areas where maybe other people don't necessarily look like me, but, you know, we're all human, so maybe they're experiencing similar things as well.
Oh, I love that, hearing that, and just like that, the power of a mentor, a friend, but also community, right? It's so important to have that. So, you know, and I can identify with that too. It's like, oh, there's other people going through what I'm going through. I don't have to do this alone. Right. Yeah. How about you, Jared?
You know, I've overcoming I guess first things that come to mind for me are just like how I had worked for so many years with other companies, not being so tied up in this fear. And for lack of a better word, I was just so fed up. Like, I could not go to another company feeling like this. If I wanted to have this amazing long career, it just wasn't working. And so I lean very heavily into the communities at Autodesk, the ERGs. I'm Anjelica, I love that you brought up the summit, because that was my first time ever attending an event like that. And it was incredible. And I get like emotional just thinking about all of us together. There was such a wonderful week. So for me, it was, you know, part of the driving factors was, you know, just not wanting to be unhappy in the workplace like I had been so many times before. I finally was like, this is enough's enough. And then, you know, making sure that I was spending time with the communities I identify with. So immediately getting involved with the Autodesk Black Network, immediately getting involved with the Autodesk Pride Network. I've now recently been appointed the global lead of our Pride Network. So really diving in head first, and for lack of a better word, kind of putting myself in environments where I know that I can find community, and just doing things differently than I had ever done before. So.
Oh, wow. I love that. And congratulations. Another big step in such a short period of time. I love this. That's so awesome. And so have you found, you know, now, Jared, just speaking to like, now that you're part of heading that group, do you find yourself in new vulnerable situations in a workplace that you haven't been in before? And how do you manage that?
Absolutely. You know, taking on the lead has been such an exciting journey, and undeniably, like, it's a lot of education and times where you have to reach out and ask for help and advice. And you know, a lot of people, for instance, on our board and involved with the ERG have been with the company for a long time, or they've been doing this ERG work for way longer than I. And so I find myself in those vulnerable moments, whether if I'm leading a board meeting or getting prepared to submit, you know, kind of planning for the year, to just make sure I lean on, you know, those safe kind of individuals that I've identified, you know, when I'm really needing, you know, that support. And it's been a beautiful experience. If you told me, you know, 4 years ago that I would be leading a network of, you know, almost 1,000 constituents, you know, I would have probably giggled at you and like probably been like, I don't know, but maybe. And in just the personal growth that I've experienced and hopefully others have witnessed, has been instrumental to my success here.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. So Anjelica, and we'll open up to you too, Jared, but we're gonna jump over here. You know, we in some of the other summits or in the other speakers today, we were talking about, you know, authenticity versus lip service, right? So how can you tell if, you know, a company is doing that, is actually incorporating inclusive practices? And for folks that are on the job hunt right now or looking to pivot or you know, seek new employment, when interviewing in a company, how can they decipher between these lip service moments and like genuine commitment to inclusion?
Yeah. One of the things that impressed me about Autodesk when I was interviewing with them, I've been at Autodesk for about a year and a half, was they made it very clear publicly, like they put their numbers on the site of the breakdown, at least in the US, of their diversity numbers, and they talked a little bit about their strategy and where they were trying to go. So they were very transparent. So I think if they're talking about it proactively without you having to ask, that's a big plus for me. But especially in the interviewing process, for me, I like to ask. I want to like bring up the concern directly and ask for examples of what they've done. So for me, when I got interviewed by the senior director and he asked me, you know, what support do you need in terms of like areas of development to get off to a great start? I was honest with him. I said, you know, it's going to be challenging for me to delegate or to say no when prioritizing, because, you know, these are things that while maybe some of my white male colleagues in the past have been praised for doing some of those things, you know, when I, you know, try to ask for help, suddenly it's, you know, I'm not up for the task. And so what I appreciated wasn't that he had a, you know, oh, that's perfect, we've got this, you know, cookie cutter like program perfect and ready for you, but like he listened, he made me feel seen, and he shared a little bit of his experience. And so for me, that told me volumes about what the leadership was like there, because I know that, you know, they'll be willing to support me in the needs that I have. So for me, I definitely think it is valuable to bring it up to see if they can like not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk.
Yeah, awesome. And I love hearing how it was, like you said, not a cookie cutter situation, right? They asked you, how can we support you? You had some specifics that would be helpful, and then you move forward. And that's the way, I mean, it's just so inspiring to hear that, as opposed to like checking a box and, oh, okay, cameo time. And Francis, way to take the stage.
Vulnerability in action.
Hello.
Authenticity in action.
Hello. I love you too, my little baby. I love you too. This pooch. Jared, as someone, you know, it's now been Autodesk for a couple of years, you looked for this, right? When you like you said, you know, you were fed up, couldn't handle this, you didn't want to get burnt out. So what did you, maybe you can speak to when you were applying with Autodesk, what are some of the things you're like, oh, this looks real, this doesn't look like lip service to me? And then how was that affirmed as you continued forward?
Yeah, you know, I had gotten to this point where there was an offer, and I was circling back asking the company as it delivered them, you know, flat out, what's it going to be like to be a gay Black man at your company? And can you connect me with some folks that can speak to that experience, whether it be different parts of the different communities that I identify with? And this really beautiful moment occurred with the senior recruiter that I was working with, and you know, she, you know, identified with my community, and was like, I can speak to this, and then also directed me towards folks in the Autodesk Pride Network and the Autodesk Black Network, so I could have actual conversations on LinkedIn and connect with folks and get a more like even like offline experience too, and just really something that felt truly authentic. So it was a bit of a curveball question that I threw at the recruiters. I was, definitely at a point of feeling pretty confident in that ask, and really confident with what I wanted this next work experience to be. And so, yeah, just kind of flat out asked and made my decisions a lot of how the recruiter and how the hiring team responded, and examples and contact information was relayed. It was made it pretty clear, made my decision really easy. So.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's so awesome. So we have just a couple minutes left, and we're getting some great questions from the chat as well. And, it's like, how are we going to do them all? We only get to choose one pretty much at this point. But, Alexandria asked a really great question, and I'm going to bridge it just a little bit for time, but can you define authenticity in the workplace? There's a lot of debate of what that truly is for Black people in workspaces, where when we are the minorities, many of us who are exhausted with code switching, but it seems that when we don't, it's off-putting who aren't part of our communities. Do you have any experience with this? And what is it to be fully authentic for you at Autodesk now in the workplace? Anjelica, we'll jump to you first.
I think what comes to mind for me, some parts of it I do think it's dependent on the organization. Like the organization and the culture needs to be there. I'm not here to convince anybody. I can just speak from my own experience. I think when I consider how people respond, I try to keep in mind that it's whatever way they're responding to me is a projection of what's going on for themselves. Like it has nothing to do with me. And so I don't have, kind of like Jared, I don't have time to try and change other people's minds. Something that I also try to keep in mind is at the end of the day, we're here to drive outcomes. And so if I can get to an outcome in a way that's different from someone else, but still delivers the result, then I think for the people, where it really matters, I think that's definitely like kind of like a lever that I can pull. But I do think it's very culture driven, and I appreciate, like, for the most part at Autodesk, that I can kind of show up how I want to show up. I'd say for anyone else, like I'm not necessarily looking to be understood, but I want to be accepted. You don't have to have my lived experience. I'm not expecting anyone to necessarily go back and forth and relate directly with me on the same thing, but I want my experience to at least be acknowledged. So I think for me, I'm willing to put myself out there, and I think I want to hold the company to the test. If that's something that they value, then we're going to actually see by me showing up. So it's definitely a very vulnerable thing to do. And if the company's not responding well, especially if I'm still producing good business results, then for me, I would take that as maybe a sign to go elsewhere.
Wow, you just took us to church right there. That was talk about bring your authentic self to work, and this talk. Hello. That was a curveball question. You didn't know that one was coming. That was so powerful. Thank you so much. Jared, we're out of time. How do we stay in contact with both of you, ask follow-up questions? Because we're getting great questions from the chat. I'm sure people would want to reach out and hear more from both of you.
Absolutely. I dropped my a link to my LinkedIn in the chat and in the Q&A section. I hope that shows up. Let me know if not. But don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from people who are job seekers. If you're interested in Autodesk, if you're doing ERG work at your company, would love to hear from you and bounce ideas off of you. So yeah, please allow me to be a resource, and don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks, Jared. And Anjelica, how can folks reach out to you?
Same here, LinkedIn. I can drop mine in the chat in just a second, but be more than happy to talk Autodesk or anything non-Autodesk related. this is definitely an area that I'm passionate about.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was so great to see you both again today. I'm so glad we got to sync before, and thank you for making the time for the chat today. I thank you, and my dog thanks you. He's trying to get back in the shot. There you go. Okay. Thank you both. Have a great day, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.